Hi, this is Mike from Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Fractal Celsius S36. Keep watching to find out more. Okay, so today we're going to be taking a look at this cooler. This is the Fractal Design Celsius S36, and this was sent to us kindly by one of our viewers, Matthew Bennett. So thank you, Matthew, for sending it to us. We do appreciate it. And by return, I thought I'd make a dedicated video on it. So we're going to go through in this video, we're going to take a look at the packaging, see what you would get inside the packaging. Also, we're going to show you how to install the fans on the cooler, because they don't come on there as standard. And also we're going to show you how to install it on a AM4 system. And after all that, we're going to do some tests to see how it performs. So strap yourselves in, this could be a long one. So first of all, let's take a look at the packaging. Now this is pretty standard packaging actually from Fractal. So obviously you've got the cooler on the front and you've got the cold plate and pump all assembled in there, and you've got this nice braided pipe work. You've got the Fractal Design and Celsius S36 on the front there. On the side we've got some barcodes, all that kind of stuff. On the back it goes into some more detail about the individual features of this. So you've got the Dynamic X2 GP12 PWM fans installed. You have a 5-year warranty. You've got an integrated fan hub. You've also got a dual mode fan control, which is really interesting actually. We'll be taking a look at that a little bit later, but it's got an automatic setting and a PWM controlled setting. So if you want total silence, or pretty near to silent as you can get, you can leave it in the automatic mode and it kind of ramps everything down. Or if you want to go guns blazing, set it to PWM mode and you can control it through your motherboard's BIOS or fan control software. Also in this section it says about the expandable loop. So this is kind of like a slightly half-hearted attempt at being an open system. So what you can do is you can actually disconnect one of the pipes from the pump and you can actually extend the system either to your GPU or whatever else you want to do, maybe RAM coolers or something crazy like that. But it's not an entirely open system, but it's not an entirely closed system. Again, we'll take a look at that a little bit later. On this end of the box it goes into some details about the measurements of the unit. And that is pretty much it. So let's take it out and see what we actually get. Now obviously, because this was sent to me from a viewer, this has actually been used and is no longer in use in his system, so he sent it to me for review. So this packaging isn't as you'd get from the shops or if you bought it as a brand new retail product, but I'm assured that all the bits that are necessary are actually inside. Okay, where do we start? So let's start from this side. So first of all, we've got our Intel replacement backplate. So if you're installing this on an Intel system, this supports LGA 5X and also LGA 20XX. So you can use it on either types of system there. And that also comes with the top plate as well, which attaches to the pump assembly. Also, there is an AMD style bracket. Now this uses the original AMD mounting bracket, which is included with your motherboard. More packets of screws. So this is your kind of common component parts and also some of the AMD mountings and the twist thumb screws. There's a bag for the AMD system. So this is for FM2, AM3, all those kinds of setups. And there's a bag of additional screws. So if you want to have the cooler in either a push or pull configuration, you can install it either way you like. Also included are 3 of the Fractal Dynamic GP12 fans. These are the Dynamic X2s, and these have a rating of around about 500 RPM up to 2000 RPM. These also have the nice indentations on the fan blades that we saw on the Noctua fans. So these are designed for static pressure optimization and getting some serious airflow. We get a Fractal Design user manual. Now these user manuals are brilliant. Fractal products, the user manuals are excellent. I think because they come from Sweden, it's very much like an IKEA manual, so it's all laid out very clearly, very easy to see, very easy to comprehend exactly what is going on and what you need to do. And last but not least, we have the radiator assembly itself, the cabling, the tubing, and also the combination pump and PWM controller. There is also an additional PWM controller for the fans, which is mounted on the end of the radiator. This is a really good inclusion, so when you've got your fans installed, you can just plug them into the PWM controller on there, so you don't take up some of the valuable PWM ports on your motherboard. In total, even with the 3 fans included and also this pump, all you need to connect is a single PWM header. On the radiator end, this connection here is got a cable running through it from the pump, which controls the PWM, which goes to this fan controller. The other tube is actually removable, so you can unscrew that. This is using G 1/4 inch fittings, and you can literally undo that and connect it up to another device. Obviously, you will need a return pump or return pipe to go back to the radiator, but this is how the system is designed to be expandable. In reality, I don't think many people will be doing that. If you want to go for an open loop or an expandable system, I think you're more than likely to be going along the lines of an EK system. The pump head itself has got a really nice design, and with the Fractal logo, and also the outer ring, you can actually twist round to change it from auto mode into PWM mode and vice versa. Again, I would recommend leaving this in PWM mode. Auto mode is a little bit optimistic and a little bit underpowered, so if you're running a slightly hotter system, you may find the temperatures getting slightly above what you'd expect, especially for a 360mm radiator. For those that are interested, the pump in here is based on the Acertech Gen 5 design, so really if you've seen one Acertech Gen 5 pump, you've pretty much seen them all. Now at the moment here in the UK, this is currently retailing as a new product on scan for £99, so just under that magical £100 mark. I would say comparable products available on the market would be something like the X62 Kraken and also the Corsair H115i. Those are slightly smaller at 280mm, but similar sort of price point and very similar performance. Although, as you probably noticed already, this particular setup and the fans, there's no RGB whatsoever. So if you're looking for a slightly more subtle build and you're not a great fan of RGB, this is going to be right up your street. Also, obviously, you will need to make sure that you have a large enough chassis to put this in. This is a 360mm radiator and it does take up quite a lot of room. So do check your system before ordering one. So with all that said, let's get this assembled, put it on a test bench and see how it does. So first of all, when you're putting the fans onto the radiator, because the fans that are included actually come specifically with shorter length cables, you do need to make sure that the fans are orientated correctly so that the cables will actually fit and actually attach to the PWM header. So the first fan, the furthest away, and this is with the PWM side of the controller actually towards you and with the cable towards you. So on the first fan, on the furthest edge, put it so that this is in the corner nearest you. With the middle fan, as you can see, the cable is coming straight out of the top, so you want that closest to you also. And the final fan you can have with the bit of the cable that comes out, have that wrapped around slightly and then placed on the top. The reason behind this is when the cables are all routed along here, you can actually use the screws that are included to mount the fans to the radiator. You can actually use those as a form of cable management to keep everything really nice and tidy. This means that you're not going to have any loose cables all over the place. And a really nice feature of this entire setup is it is very, very stealthy. All the cables pretty much get hidden in this end and also the PWM controller, and the rest of the cables are all routed through these pipes. So all you've got is one cable at the very end from the pump, which is excellent. I'll try and get some close-up shots of me actually putting the screws into the radiator so you can see how the cable management works. So this is a shot of the cable management. So what you need to do is push the cable across to that side and then put the screw down through, and then the screw actually keeps this cable in place. Now we can move down to the next one, a little bit further down. So push the cables in, closest to the fan, then drop your retaining screw in, and when you tighten it up, as if by magic, the cables are held in place. Pretty cool. And finally, when you get to the very end one, you can just put all the cables through and drop the screw down through. And that's it. Your cables are ready to plug into the end. So now we do is plug in the last of the cables, which is nice and easy to do because it's all been routed round. And then you can just tuck the cables in to make a tidy job of it. And there we go. All the cables nicely routed round and held in place by the screws. So that's the fans installed and we're ready to rock and roll. So now we're going to set up the system and we're going to test it. This is the same test bench as we used on the Noctua, the NHu12s. You can check that video out if if you click on the link up here. So this comprises of a ASRock B450 Pro 4 motherboard, a Ryzen 7 1700X, a Zotac 1650 Super, 16 gigs of V-Color RAM, and a 500 watt power supply. So this is going to be a pretty fair example of the two coolers. So if you're thinking of maybe getting yourself a Noctua, or you're considering a 360mm rad, this might be the video for you. So this is the setup. So first thing we're going to need to do is to remove the AM4 plastic retainers, which are included with the motherboard. Bearing in mind how many times I remove these, you'd think I'd just leave them off. So the standard AMD backplate, which is already attached to the motherboard, we're going to leave that in place. And now we're going to apply a little bit of cooling paste. Now the actual cooling plate on the pump, it's actually quite a large plate, so a little bit of extra compound won't do too much harm. Next up, we need to install these. These are the AMD standoffs. These don't have to be overly tight, just make sure they're firm. And once they're done, we're pretty much ready to install the cooler. Okay, so we've got the pillars on, so now what we need to do is to put the AMD base plate onto the pump assembly. And to do that, it needs to be turned 1/8 of a click when you put it on. So bear in mind where the actual cable is coming out here, because you don't want it to be obstructing any of these lugs. So if you put it into one side, and then you can click it across, and it's not obstructing the cable, which if you need to change the setting from PWM to auto, there is a little bit of a twist there. So again, just best to do that just so that this section doesn't obstruct any of the screw holes. So now we can put the pump assembly over the top of the processor, which is done pretty easily by just lining up the holes and dropping the cooler down on. Then we can use the knurled screws or thumb screws and just attach those. These are actually quite a nice weighted screw as well, so they fit on very nicely and they're very, very easy to turn. There is a crosshead on the top of them as well, so once you've done them up pretty tight, do them in a sort of crisscross motion. And once you're done with that, with your thumb screws, just give them a little tiny turn, a quarter of a turn, something like that, until you can't turn them any farther. They're designed to lock out at a certain point, so they don't get damaged or don't put too much pressure on the CPU. So now all we need to do is to connect our single PWM cable, which we can attach to our PWM header on the motherboard. Now on this particular board we've got two headers. One is for CPU 1, CPU 2. On this particular board it's the closest one to the RAM slots. The additional one on the outside is for a pump. Even though this is a pump, because this is a dedicated all-in-one unit, we want to attach it to the CPU header. And once you've done that, you can then just put the cable down slightly so it's not obstructing your RAM slots, and yeah, pretty much ready to go. Okay, so we've done some benchmarks, and yeah, I'm not entirely sure, I'll be honest with you. Now temperature wise, yeah, definitely a winner, and yeah, so far has been the lowest temperatures I've seen on a cooler that is passed our way. Idle temperatures, 24 degrees was the lowest registered, which is fantastic because it's about 23, 24 degrees in the room. So we're looking at ambient temperature on the cooler, which for a 360 rad, you probably expect that. In idle circumstances, it's not that difficult with that amount of water and that amount of fans to get to those sort of temperatures. Under full load, now again, this is Ryzen 7 1700X on a B450 Pro 4 board, which isn't the best and doesn't push the processor to the most it could, but it gives us a good indication as that's what we've tested previously. And the lowest temperature at the full whack with the fan set to PWM mode, where it ramps up a little bit further to 3000 RPM on the pump and about 2000 RPM on the fans, we're at about 52, 53 degrees, which actually is pretty phenomenal. I really was quite surprised. I didn't expect it to do quite as well as that. Although the noise profile wasn't particularly acceptable. The fans at 2000 RPM, especially when there's three of them, does get pretty noisy. Having said that, currently at idle with this set to auto mode and just a few Windows tasks running in the background, it is absolutely whisper quiet, and literally again, same as before, all I can hear is the graphics card. If I stop that, yeah, absolute silence, blissful. In fact, the fans are spinning so slowly, around about 400, 500 RPM if that, and if I look to the side a little bit, it actually looks like they've stopped momentarily, so they are spinning very, very slowly, and still it is very cold to the touch. So yeah, doing pretty well. I did find in PWM mode, the fans do have a tendency to ramp up. Now, I'm not entirely sure whether this is a fault with the board, which I'm still investigating, but was a little bit distracting to say the least. So, pros on this cooler. Temperatures, for sure. Idle temperatures, absolutely brilliant. If idle temperatures is your thing and you just want your PC to remain as cool as possible, excellent. If you want it to remain as cool as possible under full load, and maybe you're gaming, you've got a headset on, and you're not particularly bothered by noise or the sound of air moving through your case, then again, this is definitely an excellent choice. But if you're going to be someone who's going to have your system pretty much full pelt most of the time, under full loads, it does get a little bit noisy. So if maybe you're rendering videos all day long, or you are doing excessive loads pretty much flat out all the time, then it may not be the one for you. But under general gaming purposes, where the CPU is under maybe a 50-60% load most of the time, it's going to be absolutely fine. And personally, I think it looks great. Obviously, you can, if you want to, you can change the fans for RGB ones, but then that kind of goes against the whole point of this thing. This is designed to be very simplistic, very easy to install, very easy to use, and yeah, pretty classical looking. So there you go. There has been my unboxing, my review, and my impressions of the Fractal Celsius S36. Again, massive thank you out to Matthew for sending it over to us for review purposes. I really do appreciate it. And if any of you out there in viewer land have got anything that you're not using and you want me to review on the channel, please feel free to get in contact with us, and yeah, we can make some arrangements. But anyway, that wraps things up for this video. I've been Mike, this is Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and hopefully we'll catch you in the very next video. Thanks for watching. So there we go, that has been my impressions of the... what the f*** is it? So there we go, that has been my impressions and... oh,